Now, Marx had no doubt that the revolution that would ensue would be violent, that the revolution that ensued would be one in which lots of people would be killed. He was hoping a lot of capitalists would die. He had no doubts about this. But this was in the future. In his own mind, the time that it would take, the way in which this would happen was that the working class would come to realize they'd been exposed. They'd read Karl Marx, they would read Friedrich Engels, they would come to understand their position in society that is far from being the slaves of the capitalist production, they're the real masters. They've got to take control of the situation, and that the new society would arise. But this was in the future. This would take years, maybe even decades, even in the most advanced industrialized countries, because industrialization is what built a working class. Germany, Britain. This is a long way off before all this sort of thing happens. It's inevitable, it's coming, but it's a long way off. And the idea that it could happen in an unindustrialized country, even a country like Russia, for which Marx had enormous contempt, the idea that a country like this, which just beginning, had no real industrial revolution underway, could take place, that a revolution is ridiculous. Lenin's view is the opposite. It's precisely, at least industrialized countries, the one in which capitalism is just beginning to take shape here and beginning to shake the foundations of the traditional state and traditional institutions. That's precisely where a handful of men, a handful of dedicated men who understand power, who understand how they can seize power in the name of the working class and overthrow the existing institutions. That's the society in which the opportunity to create a dictatorship of the proletariat is most likely. The opportunity will be there. The opportunity, what we today call a failed state. Failed states is where power is waiting to be assumed by a revolutionary elite. For Lenin, that was Russia. And what's the point of such an exercise? Is it to create a dictatorship of the proletariat? In Lenin's view, that's the phraseology, but his view expanded far greater than that. His view was that the result would be a massive uprising which would sweep Europe and sweep the globe, as the working class and their leadership and their elite leadership would now rise up against the existing status quo and generate massive class war. And that's really the end game for Lenin. For Lenin, it is the unleashing of violence in all of its forms, in all of its directions, even in the name of national liberation, even in the name of national determination. This is a very different view from Marx. For Marx, it's the unfolding of history that leads to these events. For Lenin, it's the unfolding of a revolutionary elite dedicated to the goal who will bring about violence and bring about the collapse of the existing society. What does Marx say? He says everything that exists deserves to be destroyed. Right? It's a quotation actually from the devil, from Mephistopheles, from Goethe's Faust. Lenin agreed, but he said, we don't have to wait for that. We can do it right now. And that's where we're going, and that's what we're going to do. And we can enlist the various movements of violence, the various movements that are involved and that we can take and assume in the process here. When you think about Lenin versus Marx, believe me, Lenin becomes almost sort of a quaint thinker. It's like a real 19th century thinker, almost antiquated in his belief and his waiting for history to move the dials of events and the dials of human history forward. Lenin doesn't care where history's going. What he cares about is being on the right side of the gun. And that Mao's famous motto, right? Power comes from the barrel of a gun. Lenin never said it, but he's the one who believed it, and he's the one who put that idea into motion. So is Lenin a disciple of Marx in an intellectual sense, in a genealogy of ideas way? Yes, of course. There's no denying that. But Lenin's worldview is not a political philosophy. It's a program for revolutionary action. It's a program set up for translating violence into destroying an old order and creating a new order from it.